Assalamu alaikum. So before I start, the talk was rather long, so I'm going to try and cut it short because Izhar has given me a very limited time. But Bismillah, let's start. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Allahumma salli afdala salatin wa ala as'adi makhluqatika Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi. Allahumma faqihna fi ddin wa alimna ta'wil wa ja'alna min khayrati ummati Sayyidina wa Maulana Muhammadin. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I've been given the topic that Rasulullah is al-Mu'allim al-Kamil, the most perfect teacher that humanity has ever seen. Rasulullah himself said, Innama bu'istu mu'alliman. Innama bu'istu mu'alliman. I have been sent as a teacher. And Allah in the Qur'an says, introduces Rasulullah in Surah Araf, الَّذِينَ يَتَّبِعُونَ الرَّسُولَ النَّبِيَّ الْأُمِّيِّ. And I want to slightly change the way this verse is explained. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent as the perfect teacher. Now, to be a perfect teacher, to be a Kamil teacher, one needs two things. Number one, to have a good instructor yourself, and number two, to be able to pass on that instruction that you have received completely according to the audience you have, according to your student. Because remember, Rasulullah was a teacher of humanity, of the young, the old, the poor, the rich, men, women, people in bondage, in slavery, people who were free, and for all time to come. Now, in order to have that quality, you should not be a teacher for shall I say, that just so teachers can teach us, women or men or children or adults. No, you have to have those qualities. How? In his book, Rasul al-Mu'allim, Sheikh Abu Fatah al-Ghudda, Abdul Fatah Abu Ghudda, he gives at least 40 different methodologies that Rasulullah has taught us. That till the end of time, if teachers just stick to a few of those methods, which I will elaborate today, then this fact that he was the most Kamil teacher sent to humanity will be justified. I will touch on the topic. So let's start with the verse that I quoted. Even Imam Ghazali, we have quite a few students of knowledge here, I think. So in our second year, I think we studied Imam Ghazali's Qawaid al-Aqaid. And when we study the second tenet of faith, which is Shahadatu Rasuli sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Imam Ghazali introduces Rasulullah sallallahu as how? وَأَنَّهُ بَعَثَ النَّبِيَّ الْأُمِّيَّ الْقُرَيْشِيَّ. So again the word Nabi al-Ummi. It is very important how we translate this word, al-Nabi al-Ummi. Imam Zabidi in his Taj al-Urus translates this word in 6 different ways. The one that I like the most is مَنْ لَا يَقْرَ وَلَا يَقْطُبْ. The one who does not read or write. Not the one who cannot read or write, but rather the one who does not read or write. Because why do you need to read or write? One needs to understand this. Why do you need to read and write? You read and write because you're not always around your teachers. You forget what they have taught you. Your Adaptul Sadr and your Adaptul Kitab is not very good. So the teacher is not around for you to ask those questions. However, Man huwa mu'allimu Rasulillahi? Man huwa mu'allimu Rasulillahi? Who Allah? Who is the teacher of Rasulullah? Allah. Allah is always around. And Allah is downloading information directly to the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Either directly or through the intermediate of Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam. There is no question that cannot be answered then, isn't it? So why does Rasulullah need to read or write? The translation that we have in our books, that when we read the Asma, Sayyidina Ummiyun is one taught by God. I think that's a beautiful translation of that. So now moving on. So now that we have established that Rasulullah has had the best of instructions, the instruction that never ended. It carried on for 23 years. And Rasulullah himself says, Adabani Rabbi fa ahsana ta'dibi. My Lord taught me, and how beautiful was his teaching. And so from the very beginning, Rasulullah was not just taught by God, Rasulullah spiritually was given knowledge. And I will not go into the details of, but I will mention the two incidences. One was the incident of Shaq al-Sadr. It happened very early on, when Rasulullah was only 3 or 4 years old, in the desert with Sayyidah Halima Sa'adiyah, radiyallahu anha. So, people know of the Shaq al-Sadr waqiyah? I'll just mention it very briefly. His blessed chest was split open by Sayyidina Jibreel. It was a little laser surgery. His heart was removed, cleansed, but then something was put in it. Things were removed, but things were put in. This is in Bukhari. This hadith is in Bukhari, the whole waqiyah is in Bukhari. You can read up on it. In it was put knowledge and hikmah. So when knowledge is put in your heart from that young age, later on, this Shaq al-Sadr was repeated 3 times. But then later on, the famous hadith about the knowledge, the spiritual giving of knowledge to Rasulullah comes from the hadith of Mala'ul A'la, the hadith of the highest assembly. Very shortly, very quickly telling you the hadith that I think it is Sayyidina Mu'adh ibn Jabal, he narrates that one morning Rasulullah was slightly late for Fajr. And when Rasulullah finally came, they read the Fajr very quickly, and then Rasulullah explained. He said, I saw my Lord in the most beautiful of forms. And Allah asked Rasulullah, فِيمَا يَخْتَصِمُ الْمَلَأِ الْأَعْلَى. And what does the highest assembly compete over? And Rasulullah said, La adri Rabbi, I do not know. And they carried on, just coming to the point from the hadith, that eventually Allah put his hand on the chest Mubarak of Rasulullah and Rasulullah said, Tajalla li kullu ma fi samawati wal ard. Whatever was in the heavens and the earth, whatever knowledge was in the heavens and the earth, it became apparent to me, فَأَرَفْتُهُ, and I knew everything. So this is how knowledge was spiritually put into Rasulullah. But it didn't end there, did it? It didn't end there. Rasulullah was then placed from a very young age under the care of the most intelligent of Arabs at the time, his grandfather, Sayyidina Abdul Muttalib, and then later with his uncle, Sayyidina Abu Talib. These were the masters of the Quraysh at that time. They were the leaders. So when you keep good company, when you are put in a desert environment, it helps sharpen your faculties. Rasulullah was also a shepherd. It teaches you things to look after. Every prophet that Allah has sent to date has always been a shepherd. To teach, this is Allah teaching. This is Allah teaching his prophets what was to come. So now Rasulullah has all this knowledge. How now can we explain that he is Al-Mu'allim Al-Kamil? For that, let's understand knowledge. The word knowledge is mentioned 750 times in the Qur'an in its various forms, in the various sirahs, So let's start. To be a good teacher, you need to teach in 4 ways. Number 1, visual. So your students there are different learners. We as human beings learn in different ways. We are either visual learners, auditory learners, kinesthetic learners, that we imagine scenarios and we paint pictures in our brain, and that's what triggers our memory. And then there is also tactile. So these are the 4 ways of learning. And now I will pick out a few ahadiths with which I will demonstrate that Rasulullah used every possible method to teach depending on the audience. So let's start let's start with how the Sahaba explained that Rasulullah was as a teacher. The Sahaba were praying behind Rasulullah, and somebody sneezed, and the Sahabi he said, "May Allah bless you, Ya Rahmakallah," And the other Sahaba, they started staring at him. And during the Salah, the Sahabi says, "Why are you staring at me?" And then the other Sahaba started clapping their thighs to make him be quiet. Finally, he realized, okay, maybe I need to be quiet. When Salah finished, this is the beautiful part. When Salah finished, Rasulullah called the Sahabi to him and sat down with him and taught him the etiquettes of Salah and what to do, what not to do. The point from this hadith, the line that he used, he said that in all my life and in all my learning, I did not see a teacher whose methodology was better. And I don't think I will ever see it. So this is how Rasulullah taught. Never rebuked, never told somebody off. Called them, sat them down, and gave them a complete lesson such that that lesson was embedded in them. The Sahaba, specifically Rasulullah was very, very careful not to offend or upset the Bedouin tribes that used to come to Rasulullah. The Bedouins had less than perfect manners, shall I say. And the Sahaba, Sayyidina Anas narrates that we used to wait. This is the hadith of Sayyidina Abu Rafa'a. He came to, and Sayyidina Anas narrates this, and he said we used to wait for a wise Bedouin to come and ask a question, so that when he would ask a question, we would all benefit from it. So Abu Rafa'a came and he said to Rasulullah Ya Rasulullah, ana rajulun gharibun ja'a yas'alu an dinihi. I have come to you to ask about my religion. La adri dini. I do not know anything about my religion. At that time, Rasulullah was sitting amongst the Sahaba, amongst them. So they were sitting on the floor amongst them. Rasulullah stood up, he asked for a chair. He asked for a chair, she sat. They said that a chair was bought with legs of iron, so it was quite a tall chair. Rasulullah sat on it and in a loud voice taught Abu Rafa'a the tenets of faith, Aqidah. He did that for one reason. When you're teaching something important, and Aqidah is very important to teach, to somebody who doesn't know the basics of Islam, it is to be taught with importance. He left what he was teaching, he taught the whole tenets of faith, all the Sahaba heard. He then, when finished this topic, he got off the chair, he sat down back again. This is how Rasulullah taught. What is he doing here? This is visual. This is visual. The second is just to another point, that when Rasulullah would teach, he would never sit on a higher or pulpit or until later on when it had to be made for him. But in the beginning, when the Bedouins would come, they would say, Ayyukum Muhammad, and Sahaba would say, Hadha Rajul Abyadul Muttaqiyun, this fair gentleman who's sitting amongst us. Muttaqiyun means he would sometimes be reclining, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So this is how he would normally teach. But when he was teaching something important, when he was teaching tenets of faith or salah, this is when he changed. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Another hadith that comes to my mind is when Rasulullah was once praying he was standing on the mimbar delivering the Jummah khutbah. Suddenly he stopped the khutbah, he turned around and he started praying, and the Sahaba then obviously joined the Jama'ah. Rasulullah did the qiyam, did the ruku, but when he had to do the sujood, he got off the mimbar, did the sujood on the floor, got back up, completed the second rakah exactly the same, ruku, but then for the sajda came back down, did the sajda, went back up, did the tashahhud, did the salam. And then at the end of it he said, why did I pray like this? I prayed like this, لِتُعَلِّمُوا صَلَاتِي, so I can teach you how I pray. So you learn how I pray. This is visual again. Rasulullah is teaching everybody how he prays. So one thing is another thing was Rasulullah would want people to keep his company, to learn by example. A man came to Rasulullah and said, these prayer times confuse me, Rasulullah. I do not know when Asr ends and Maghrib starts, what time Zohar is coming. Rasulullah said, spend 2 days with me, Yawmain. Spend 2 days with me. The first day, Rasulullah prayed every salah at the beginning of the prayer time. The second day, Rasulullah prayed every salah at the end of the prayer time. Then Rasulullah said at the end of it, where is the man who asked for the prayer times? He said, Ana ya Rasulullah. Rasulullah said, وَقْتُ صَلَاتِكُمْ بَيْنَمَا رَأَيْتُكُمْ. So the prayer times is between the two times that you saw. Who taught Rasulullah this? This was exactly how Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam taught Rasulullah how to pray. Another thing, wudu. Rasulullah didn't just teach them how to do wudu. He would practically show them, such that he would not just teach them religion like this. He was teaching them life like that. Rasulullah was en route to the masjid to pray, and a boy was slaughtering a sheep. And Rasulullah said to him, move aside, so I can show you. And at that time, Rasulullah put his hand between the skin and the meat, and he showed him how to skin the sheep. And then in the end, he said, this is how you do it. And he carried on, went to the masjid, prayed, not repeating his wudu or anything. But these are the little examples. Everybody learned physically from this. When Rasulullah, so this is visual. Then auditory. Now, when you speak to somebody, let me open the hadith up actually. So, Sayyidah Aisha narrates that when Rasulullah did not speak like you speak, when Rasulullah spoke, there used to be gaps in his speech, little pauses, such that whoever would sit with him, yahfuzuhu, they would memorize what Rasulullah had said. And Sayyidina Anas says that Rasulullah would repeat everything how many times? 3 times. Rasulullah would repeat everything 3 times, such that by the time he finishes, everything would be literally, the Sahaba would have memorized it by then. When Rasulullah was teaching something important, something of value, what was the most important thing Rasulullah taught the Sahaba? The Qur'an. Of course, the Qur'an. How would Rasulullah teach the Qur'an? Here we have not just visual. This is not just slowly and repeating everything 3 times. Taiba, would you come here? Just to show you. So Rasulullah, when this is a famous hadith of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud was taught Rasulullah, sit down for a minute. So Rasulullah taught Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud the Qur'an such that he would only teach it 10 verses at the time. And in those 10 verses, Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud says that I would have had the itqan of everything that is to do with either fiqh or aqidah or any history lesson, until everything in that hadith was clear to me. Rasulullah would not move to the next 10 verses. Most of the time when Rasulullah was teaching, 3 Sahaba were taught like this: Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud, Sayyidina Zayd ibn Sabit. But Sayyidina Zayd ibn Sabit even more so, because his thigh used to be on the thigh of Rasulullah. Now, bring your hand in. Rasulullah would hold the hand of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud like that. He would then look at him clearly and directly, and then he would teach him. He not only taught Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud physically the Quran like that, with this physical contact, the blessed barakah of that contact, but also remember that when somebody is touching you and teaching you something, you will never forget it. Taiba, for the rest of her life, will not forget this moment that I called her here, I held her hand, and I told her something. Now imagine if I'm teaching her something, I'm saying, this is what it is. This is how. The only hadith of tashahhud, you can go now. Actually, keep sitting. I'll the only hadith of tashahhud that we have in Bukhari, from which we have learned tashahhud, and in most of the 4 schools, how do we know the tashahhud, the words of the tashahhud? Because Rasulullah taught Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud tashahhud like that, by holding his hand, by teaching him. Another way, when Rasulullah wanted to teach something important, he would hold the shoulders of the Sahabi. He would hold the shoulders of the Sahabi and teach like that. Another way was, bring your hands like that, was this. When Rasulullah had to tell something important, he would hold the hands of the Sahabi like that, and then teach it. These are physical not everybody was taught like that. Remember, these are the close Sahaba. These are Sayyidina Zayd ibn Sabit, radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, all the Sahaba who then became the teachers of the Ummah. Now you can go if you want, my love. So, who became the teachers of the Ummah. Where did Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud go? He went to Iraq. He went to Iraq and he taught the Iraqis fiqh. And when he taught the Iraqis fiqh, afterwards when Sayyidina Ali radiallahu an was sent to Iraq as a governor, and he was so impressed with the knowledge that the Iraqis had that he said, who taught you all this? And they said it was Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud. They said for a very small man, he has a very tall reach, because Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud was very short. He became the faqih of this ummah. All of our Hanafi fiqh is based on the hadith and the chains of narration based through Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud. We know the chain of the Hanafi fiqh. I am sure Maulana Sajjad has taught us very well. Then, what about the Mufassir of the Qur'an? Who is the Mufassir of this ummah? Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas. He said Rasulullah went over every verse of the Qur'an with him 3 times and taught it to him in such detail that most of the tafasir, the Ummahatul Tafasir, are based on his teachings. Then we have Sayyidina Abu Huraira. What did Rasulullah do? There obviously has to be the spiritual. You can hear me without this, can't you? Yeah? So, oh, do you want this? Yeah? Okay. So, Sayyidina Abu Huraira said that he went to Rasulullah and said, Ya Rasulullah, I can't remember. I keep forgetting. Rasulullah said, give me your chadar. The chadar is your sheet. So he had his, it's called burda in Arabic, his chadar. And Rasulullah did, so he started doing this. Rasulullah started doing this. And by the end of it, Sayyidina Abu Huraira says, radiyallahu an, that Rasulullah gave me 2 bits of knowledge. One are all the ahadith. The most ahadith narrated are by Sayyidina Abu Huraira radiyallahu an. The most hadith narrated, but he said, Sayyidina Abu Huraira says, Rasulullah gave me 2 bits of knowledge. I have only given you half of it. Same with the tafsir. We were only given bits of the tafsir. There are verses of the Qur'an that Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas did not give the tafsir to us. So these are just some very little methods that I am giving you of how Rasulullah taught the Sahaba. Sometimes Rasulullah would answer a question more than was necessary. Sometimes he would deflect a question. Sometimes he would use your rational faculty. I'll just give you a few examples of each one of them. How am I for time? 5 more minutes? Okay, so one example was how you use somebody's rational faculties. Is a boy came to Rasulullah and said, Ya Rasulullah, give me permission to commit zina. Rasulullah and the Sahaba were like, Mah. They started saying Mah to him. Rasulullah didn't say anything. Rasulullah said to him, come here, sit with me. And what did Rasulullah, did he rebuke him? No. Did Rasulullah give him the verses of the Qur'an that told him that he will burn in hellfire? No. Did Rasulullah tell him, how dare you think like that? No. Rasulullah said simply, he knew, let's use rationality. He's an intelligent boy here. Let him come up with the answer. Would you like that for your mother? He said, no, Rasulullah. Would you like that for your sister? No. Would you like that for your aunt? Yet the hadith carries on. In the end, Rasulullah placed his heart on his chest and did the dua for him. Such that that boy never committed any sin like that ever in his life. Never did a thought like that come to him. Rasulullah used rational faculties. A lady came to Rasulullah and said, Ya Rasulullah, my mother pledged that she would do Hajj, but before she did Hajj, she died. Shall I do Hajj for her? This is an analogy now. Yeah? So Rasulullah said, if your mother owed money to another person, would you give it? And she said, of course, Rasulullah, I will give it. He said, this is a debt to God, and God is more deserving that you repay his debt. Little examples for different people. A man came to Rasulullah, it was Ramadan, and said, Ya Rasulullah, can I kiss my wife? He was a young man. Rasulullah said, La. Another man came to Rasulullah and said, Ya Rasulullah, it was an elderly gentleman. It was Ramadan, and these are probably their first Ramadan, so they're asking basic questions. And said, can I kiss my wife? Rasulullah said, Na'am. And the Sahaba goes, huh? And they started looking at each other, and Rasulullah said, I know why you're looking at each other. I know what answer to give when and to whom, for I know them. A boy came to Rasulullah and said, Ya Rasulullah, I want to go for jihad. This was the time of the battles, of the great battles, early Medinan period, if you look at the hadith. Rasulullah said, no, your jihad is with your parents, stay with them. Rasulullah knew what to teach, when to teach, how to teach it. These methodologies, sometimes he would defer a question, Sahaba were asking him questions, women especially, bless us all, always asking questions and always asking for his time. Such that Rasulullah dedicated a specific day, a Tuesday, to teach just women. And the women of the Ansar, may Allah bless them, asked such private, pertinent questions that Rasulullah would always, however, give the answer and then refer to Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha for details. Yes? But Rasulullah taught everybody. And sometimes somebody, Mata sa'a ya Rasulullah, a Sahabi asked, Mata sa'a, when will the hour be? Rasulullah didn't answer it, because why? What would it benefit to know when the hour will be? When will Yawmul Akhirah be? Rasulullah said, what have you prepared for it? I can carry on all night. In this book, there are 40 methodologies, which is a drop in the ocean. There are more than 100 ahadith that I have just read to prepare for this talk, and you can see by these green markers how many I have not. I'm on the first few pages. But I'll round it up. Rasulullah was approachable. He was cheerful. He would sit amongst his students. When he had to be angry, he would be angry, but only for the sake of God. If it was important, he would sometimes swear an oath. Just to reiterate that this is an important topic I am teaching, do not take it lightly. Other times he would jest and joke. A very famous jest and joke was that a Sahabi, I think it was Sayyidina Amr ibn al-As. He was in a state of janaba. He got up and he led the prayer. After doing tayammum, he led the prayer. Rasulullah then saw him later on in the day, and he said, Ya Amr, did you lead the prayer after janaba? And he said, Ya Rasulullah, it was so cold, I thought if I'll do wudu, I will die. And I have heard Allah say, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِكُمْ رَحِيمًا. Allah does not want you to kill yourself. Because I read that verse, I didn't want to kill myself. That's why I did tayammum, and Rasulullah laughed. He laughed and he walked on. This was the ease with which Rasulullah taught religion. I'm coming back to what Sidi Izhar said at the beginning of the talk. Make religion easy. Make fiqh easy. Make the tenets of faith understandable. Teach people, because you are all students of knowledge and you will all become teachers. Teach it how Rasulullah would want us to teach it. With ease. Come down to the level of your student. Become one of them. Don't be aggressive with them. Don't say, oh, why don't you know this? This is so basic. Nothing is basic. The Bedouins came and asked Rasulullah the most basic of questions, such that the Sahaba were like, but he would get up, leave the topic, leave some important topic he was teaching. He would sit up and teach that first. Do that with people. And insha'Allah, let us all become a beacon. And may Rasulullah and Allah be pleased with us, all of us, on the Day of Judgment for this. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.